backwards in time and talk about Mercedes Mone, Sasha Banks, and her place in professional wrestling history. Like, because I think history is going to look back on her as being one of, if not the most influential, women's wrestler ever. And I know it's kind of like, you could be looking at me right now going like, oh man, like ever? Come on, Zach. Like, don't be over dramatic and don't oversell. And I'm really not. Like, I'm really not. Like, she was a part of a major movement in WWE, and I think she already gets a lot of credit for that, in WWE, but I'd also think that there's more credit for her to get because she's was surrounded by other people in WWE in particular that did other things, on a little bit of a bigger stage first, right? Like, Sasha Banks is not the first woman to ever main event a WrestleMania. Becky Lynch is. Charlotte Flair is. Ronda Rousey is. But for that to happen, for that to have happened, a lot of other things had to happen first. And Sasha, Mercedes, was a part of those things that led up to WWE feeling like they could finally, put women's wrestling in the main event of WrestleMania. I mean, and it took them long enough, right? I mean, we all knew that women can be strong wrestlers and can, carry segments on Raw in major ways. And the company just never gave them enough time to do that until the class of Sasha and Becky and Bayley and Charlotte came up through NXT. And that's when things started. And really, it's not, Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, had some key moments, right? I mean, unquestionably they did. But a major talent that brought, women's wrestling in WWE to the forefront because of certain matches in particular was Sasha Banks, Mercedes Mone. The two matches that Sasha had with Bayley, at the first NXT TakeOver Brooklyn show, and then the 30-minute Iron Woman match, at another takeover. Like, those are unheralded matches. I mean, like, look, they're not unheralded, but because especially that one in Brooklyn is, a legendary match, but it's not just a good match. It is a meaningful match when you look at the course of history with women in the WWE. Like, period. I mean, no woman in WWE had a match like that one in Brooklyn before it. Like, that was a major, major opportunity for two women in a singles match that had a lot of build, that had two really strong characters, and then they went out on a major stage in a major arena and, had an absolute classic. That, I mean, so much was on the shoulders of that match. Like, if they don't deliver there and they have a total stinker of a match, like, do you think the women's evolution in WWE goes the same way? I mean, this is Vince McMahon we're talking about here, right? Like, I don't think so. Those women in that match, not only did they have their own expectations to kind of beat out, but man, you had all sorts of eyes and spotlights on you, and they delivered. And so I think that match, in a lot of ways, changed the course of women's wrestling in WWE. And Sasha Banks, Mercedes Mone, was a part of that. I mean, obviously, a key part of that. And I look back at that match, and it's such a good match. I mean, you could watch that match over and over and over and over again and still be kind of blown away by it because it's so effective. And I think the reason it stands the test of time, and this is what I think, like, the people who love good wrestling matches forget, is that match had an incredible story behind it. Like, it's not just a good match. I mean, it is a good match for sure, But I mean, there's nothing in that match that you hadn't seen before necessarily. Like, it wasn't like there were like crazy moves that nobody has seen before or anything like that. Like, it had story in it. It had drama in it. It had two characters in Bailey and Sasha that people were invested in big time, majorly invested in that Bailey story and her finally becoming the NXT Women's Champion. Like, that was a thing. And so I think you could forget sometimes like what really makes a good match. And this one is a great example of that because it didn't have a ton of bells and whistles, but man, it didn't need them. It did not need them. And what they did out there was crisp and wonderful and beautiful as far as, you know, the art of wrestling goes. And my point in all this is Sasha was a part of that. You know, no, she's not the first person to main event WrestleMania, or first woman to main event WrestleMania. But like, nobody's doing that if Sasha doesn't have that match in Brooklyn. Nobody's doing that if Sasha doesn't have, you know, the 30-minute Iron Woman match. You know, the next pay-per-view against Bailey. I think it was at the Performance Center or at a, you know, at Full Sail, but still, like, it was a hell of a match. And, you know, the rest of what happens with the women's evolution doesn't happen if those matches don't deliver. They're really important. Once Sasha Banks made it to the main roster, she main evented a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view with Charlotte Flair. Another like kind of checkbox. First woman to do that. Like, once again, the women aren't main eventing WrestleMania unless Charlotte and Sasha, you know, hit a home run with that match. And they did. And they delivered, you know. And again, it made people look, you know, look, all of this took way too long, of course, right? But, you know, given the circumstances, that type of match continued to make people inside WWE, Vince McMahon particularly, look at his women wrestlers differently. But not just as, you know, people to put on television that look good and that's it, and can pull hair, right? Like, no, they can actually have athletic, good matches that can draw and that can carry pay-per-views. And a lot of that was proven out by Sasha Banks in WWE and by